you got to start small, right? You can't boil an ocean, right? You can eventually, per se, but you really got to start small. Pick a project that you don't have a lot of visibility into, and just say, we want to attack this. And we want to show, have success criteria, have that organization you're working with, like define it.
This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Colludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. We have a very special episode today. It's really focused on AI and how it integrates with facilities management. Today's guest is a seasoned technology leader whose career spans nearly 2 decades of engineering, architecture, and innovation across multiple industries. From his early service as an airman in the United States Air Force to building advanced systems in medical technology, defense, and enterprise software, he's consistently been at the forefront of solving complex technical challenges. His roles have ranged from senior engineering positions at companies like Draeger Medical Systems, Philips, and Abiomed, to leading large-scale architectural initiatives as a principal and software architect. In his current role, he leverages his deep expertise to help organizations modernize, optimize, and operationalize their facilities. Backed by a robust academic foundation, including a BS, MS, and PhD in computer science from Salem State University and UMass Lowell, alongside with 12 patents from AI, facility management, cybersecurity, medical, and defense. He brings a rare blend of practical engineering excellence and research-driven insight to every project he leads. He is the CEO and founder of True Data Ops. Alex Agnello, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. I'm going to hire you for my hype man.
Hey, you've got a heck of a resume. It's very impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for organizing this. I'm excited to talk with some, have the listeners learn more about AI from the really good things to the really scary things, but most importantly, how they could use it in their day-to-day operations.
That's perfect. We're excited to have you. And I want to say thank you for being here and investing your time, because so AI in facilities probably comes up in 60 to 70% of conversations, I'd say, today. So really want to dive in. And I think, again, for the listeners, this is really educational. Alex is a true expert at this, and that's why we wanted to bring him on as an educational episode for everyone. So let's dig right in. Alex, with that very impressive resume you have and all the experiences you've created and been through, what's been your biggest lesson learned?
Sure. So in the field of facility management, I started this like late August of 2019. And I really started getting involved talking with friends that have, facility managers, energy managers, so on and so forth across, higher education, commercial buildings, you name it. I would talk to them and I was looking at their tools and I said, guys, I'm like, you're really kind of behind the times of how things are done. I was like, there's a lot of optimizations that can be done here. Hence, I started introducing these types of technologies to the field. And what I would say is that more and more individuals are growing to the use of it and getting more comfortable with AI. If I asked any of these individuals maybe a year and a half ago, the same exact technology that exists today, they're very scared. And, I would hear everything from hanging up the phone angrily to we don't use AI, we never plan on it, to you're taking my job. And now I think people have evolved, just like now that they've used it, to say, look, it's just a tool right now. And we want to maintain that. So my biggest lesson learned is that sometimes I need more patience with some of this technology that I use, and kind of just say, I've got some really crazy ideas, but it may be way too far forward to introduce to someone. So it gets fun because I do like showing it and teasing it, and then people get excited. But it's very hard if you don't know who I am, because people always say to me, they're like, you really do wear your emotions on your sleeve because we talk about this. You get so excited. I was like, yeah, I'm an engineer. I like solving problems, and the more complex, the better.
And before I ask my next question, Alex, and to kind of dive in further, I told Alex I consider him a kind of a unicorn combination because he's this brilliant big mind and as social and engageable as anyone could be. So, yeah, you're very approachable. Well done, Alex. Um, so you said it's too far forward, or what were your words? You won't introduce the software or the idea
There
because.
are certain ideas that I have that I've come up with, it's part of, like, the whole things with my patents are very kind of future, very innovative, and I have some other ones that I'm writing up as we speak, and if I present them right away, people are gonna be like, "I don't get it, it's too advanced," and what I've learned throughout is just to say sometimes you just need more time for people to slowly adapt with it because
Mm,
other pieces of technology will exist that kinda gets that bridge closer. Like, for instance, everyone's used some type of large language model, whether it be ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Grok, Cloud, I could name 40 of them, right? Um, and people are getting an understanding of that, which is great, but when I started showing that kind of technology for your buildings, people were very scared at
what
first.
scared them about it? Let's dig into that.
Yeah, so what scared them is that they didn't necessarily believe me that the data that I was showing them was accurate or true. Because they said, "How would you know this?" I was like, "Well, not to get complex, but it's because of the data set we gave you. We're analyzing it on the fly to give you a response that's not in your traditional method of being a graph. It's more in a narrative, and we're trying to tell you a story." And Jay, throughout this whole conversation, I always like saying, like, I wanna be able to tell you a story, because if I can
Mm,
tell you a story, then you're gonna understand it, and you're gonna be way more engaged rather than me looking at a graph. Because if I showed you a graph of data, you're gonna be like, "Great, what does it tell me?" I don't know.
mm.
But if I give you a story behind it in the form of text, you'll get a deeper understanding of what's really happening. So that kinda really scared them because 'cause they're like, "I've never seen this before." And then it kind of evolved, and with the use of people using these large language models, they've said, "I really like this now." I'm like, "Great. What's changed? Nothing from 2 years ago."
Mm.
Right? I'm just like, you just came up to speed." So, I don't necessarily wanna say the word a maturity level, but in form of, like, an AI maturity level, people are upgrading all the time, and I see it. And another example is I teach an AI for facility management class, and I fly all around the country doing this, and I have so much fun. And there's a question I love to ask, and I say, "How many people here use some type of large language model every day?" Year and a half ago, I'd be lucky to get one person. Typically, it's groups of 50 to 150 people. Now, not a single hand is not risen.
Mm. And do you think that's just simply, there were early adopters and now people see the value, so they're engaging?
I think people see the value, but at the same time, when I ask them what are they using it for, it's at very simple things like, "Oh, I just have it update my email to make it sound more professional." I was like, "Great."
Mhm.
And then I'll start giving hints to say, for instance, for the listeners and yourself, if you're going to have it spruce up an email, I always like to say, "Give me 3 versions of the same thing." That way I can pick and choose what I want because the verbiage isn't always perfect and it's very obvious sometimes, but to kind of, manipulate it a little bit by having 3 different versions, you pick and choose what you like.
I love it. So say in the last couple of years how new is AI? Or is AI not new? Like how would you explain? I know that the usage is much greater, but yeah, how would you speak to that?
Yeah, usage much greater is kind of a funny thing, in my opinion. So you've been surrounded by it throughout your entire life, essentially. Started in like the 50s and 60s with some computer scientists that, that really kind of evolved it, including machine learning back in the early 60s. And in my class, I like to give an example of an ECG lead. And I talk about this and I said, "Hey, let's use this kind of information to determine if this person has a form of afibrillation, right? Which is an inconsistent heartbeat." And I try to do something very different from FMing, just doing it purposely. So hang out with me here for a second, right? So I talk about this and I talk about, the reason why we have it because you can't have a nurse and a physician stare at your monitor at all times, right? It'd be way too cost ineffective. So that's why these algorithms were designed for it. Guess what? That is a form of machine learning. And then I like to expose like this image that you see is from the 1980s. So you've been around it, you just never had an idea. You never realized it. Even with your Amazon and Netflix things, when you look at Amazon, they show you, I'm pointing at you, Jay,
I
particular
felt it.
thing, yeah,
Hmm.
particular items that they know you're gonna be interested in. And here's the crazy part, Jay, if it's not today, they probably know when you'd want to buy it based upon your patterns of what
Mm.
you're doing. So they have a persona, a profile of the patterns that you're doing, which by definition is machine learning,
Hmm.
which is predicting your next move. And hence my doctorate, which is in predictive analytics. And we've done a lot of these types of publications in there in my early days, which I thought was kind of fun. And, my first kind of real involvement was I wanted to predict to say how often you're using water for your hot water tank and what size it should be over a 12-week rotating schedule. So if you were going to buy another hot water tank, because, they come in 40, 60, 80,
Hmm.
gallons, which one is the most efficient for you and how much would you save based off your patterns?
Wow, that's pretty practical application right there.
Yeah, and this was like 2010.
Hmm.
So, and the form of narratives and all that stuff was still there. So as I said, people have been around it. It just, I'd like to thank, these large language models for the Hollywood-ification of making it just so open. I mean, even for your banks, those chat bots that you had before,
Sure.
they're really like we'll call them beta versions of large language models. It's the same idea, right?
Mm.
Except that it's really tuned to just them. So they're expecting you to say, what is my balance? What is my current balance? What is this? What is that? They have all those questions mapped to something. Now, with the new large language models that are, we're basically talking about, say, like a Fiero versus a Ferrari, there's a huge difference there, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But they
Sure.
both move forward, just one's not as fast as the other,
You
and one
just did
has
a
more
big
features.
throwback with the example there.
Hey,
Did you say Fiero?
yeah, I did say fear.
I love it. So it's amazing when you think like you jump back to the 80s and here we are talking about AI, and being used so widely now. Or maybe what you're actually, I might have just misstated that. It had been used widely and now it's just more exposed. Did you say more Hollywood? Is that how you said it?
I call it more Hollywood-ified because it's more ingrained into your day and day.
Hmm.
So, when you're looking at everyone using these large language models, and I feel like I keep talking about it, but that's okay. When we're looking at that, it's just that it's more part of your day-to-day life. And let's take a step back, right? So before we were using ChatGPT to find things and look up things to educate, what did you use before? You used Google, right? You would
Hmm.
search to say, I'm looking for this, right? Well, what did you do 10 years before that? You'd pull out an encyclopedia book. We all had the 28 books. I had one in the 90s. I remember
Hmm.
a bit like, and that's how you educate yourself. So you can see as a humanity, we're getting smarter of how we find information. I mean, to
I
go
love
from
that.
the analog to the digital with the searching, absolutely amazing.
Mm.
To then say, I want to put human emotion about what they're asking for to the next level, and that's what the large language models are using, like that is it. So what we're finding, and I'm seeing the data going across that, I even myself use large language models to find things than I do for than I use for Google searching, unless I
Mhm.
specifically know what I'm looking for, and then I directly go right into it. And we're going to see more and more of that because it's what we're all seeming for the best benefits. And until that gets replaced, maybe in 10, 15 years with the next level of technology that no one has thought of yet, because that's the cool part, Jay, is that no one has thought of yet what is the evolution of these. I have yet to see anything because right now it's so popular. So why do I have to think about that?
Sure, sure, sure. Let me bring it back to something you stated when, 150 people in the room and some would raise their hand, most are. But then when you asked what they were doing, I think you said, write me an email or three versions of the email. That's my experience with most of the people I talk with as well. Although a few of them are saying, no, no, it's like a thought partner for me. And that's how I'm using it. But how would you, maybe you could just expand on that a little bit if that's where you want to take it? Because
Sure.
for the audience too, I did ask Alex if you want to just run us through your presentation. I think it would be highly beneficial for all of us just to hear that. So I don't want to divert from that, Alex.
Sure. So I'll give some really good points that I always like to say to how to use large language models for your day to day. Because there's 2 points. Because sometimes I've worked with organizations, and I always ask this, like, can you or can you not share data from your organization into a large language model? Do you have some type of rule or law applied? If they say yes, where you can, they typically have their own version of it, which is great. And then I like to give people kind of like, oh, why don't you do X, Y, or Z? And I'm going to give some examples. But if you can't, then I'm going to be like, is it any possible way to anonymize what you're trying to do, and
Mm,
then put it in and make sure you get okay. Don't do it first and then expect to be okay. So there's
forgiveness,
always
right?
ways, yeah. So let's just say we're looking at like building management data, right, for some of
Mm,
these folks, and a lot of the times you can export those trends, and sometimes it comes with education to say like some data points to say what it is, the metadata. Sometimes it doesn't. I'd always like to say take that data, throw it in Excel, right? Upload it as a file to whatever you choose, and then kind of say what it is so it knows. So you're educating the large language model. Like, don't just assume it's going to know, right? Even if it's energy data, right? Coming
mm.
off a fancy thing like a CT here that I had in my hand there. So you want to make sure you really tell them what you're looking for and what it is. And one of the best words that I like to give in any of these large language models, and I talk about this in my class, is the keyword insights. Because if I say, what insights do you see? I am saying, I don't know what I'm looking for. I want you to figure it out.
Mm.
And I can't tell you how many times you will get a very good response that you never realized. So maybe 4 out of 5 of the 4 out of the 5, say, ticketed, bulleted items you'll find are like, oh, yeah, I knew that. But that fifth one, you're going to be like, I never thought of that. And that's where your creativity of like really blending the two together is really good. And then I would say to you, okay, let's hone in on that fifth point. Ask a follow up specific to that point, right? Tell it to dig deeper into there. And that is a really good way of using large language models more than just make my email sound nice.
Sure. Great example. Really, really good example. So, Alex, what would you say is the state of the art with AI in facilities right now? And are there any downsides that you could highlight?
Sure. So there's a few areas of that. And it depends where you're looking, right? So if you're looking with these fault detection software, which is great, a lot of the times they have a lot of data, but when you throw them into these large language models, because I know what they're doing, I know their patterns, right? I know your tricks, I know what they're doing. So what they're doing is they're giving it an immense amount of data, they're putting it in, and what happens is they're getting a response, but their response could be like, very, very big. I can't even put my hands big enough, right? For distance. And what happens is people get really kind of like, well, this was pointless. Why did I do this? Kind of responses because it's not really honed in. And the reason of that is that they're just expecting magic to occur. Like, I'm just going to throw this data and give it very little details of what it is and expect some other system to tell me what's happening. And it can work, but I found that people don't really like that. What you really need to do is make sure that the data you're giving it, you kind of have to ask it a question ahead of time. So you're kind of limiting your data box. Like, don't give it this huge thing. You can ask it multiple questions, but at smaller data points. For instance, like, let me ask about air handlers. Let me ask about just boilers. Let me ask about cooling towers. Let me ask just about the pumps. But also, Jay, this is very important though. I find from a technologist point of view that even the data coming off the BMS systems, because we integrate with them, I can only pull from it so much so quickly, like every 15, 20 seconds, a minute. To be really efficient, sometimes you need to introduce other sensors with it to tell a story, right? So
What are these sensors you're talking about? Because you've mentioned sensors to me quite often.
yeah. So, like in my hand right now, if you guys can see it, this is a vibration sensor. We put these on pumps and motors and stuff like that. We're doing about 1,000 samples per second with it. And then we do some a fast Fourier transform algorithm for some of my techie friends on here. And then we're able to kind of analyze like what's happening within a pump. So we can do like real interesting things like determine cavitation. And cavitation is air in the pump. And you can hear it and it's really bad, right? So when you hear it, you'll know it's cavitating, but we can tell you that it's cavitating, right? And I always like to say, I was like, if you're receiving a value every, 15 seconds or 3 minutes, even I've seen, I was like, could you tell me what happened the in between time? Because vibration is happening a lot. What are
Mm.
you doing with that? And that's one of those areas to say, well, I can tell you the pump is running. I see a vibration mark of X, but I don't know what happened the first 14 seconds ahead of that.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, what are you going to predict? It's kind of hard. Kind of pulling back a little bit with my medical and my defense time, we were getting about, anywhere from 1,000 to 100,000 points a second that we were analyzing.
Wow.
So that's the type of level that we want to analyze because I can tell you a lot, right? So when you have that amount of data, which seems insane, which it kind of is, you can actually tell a full complete story of like how did it transition, but not at the second level, in the millisecond level, and sometimes in the nanosecond level, because physics, the law of physics will change drastically from one nanosecond to the next. And I have witnessed it. And I say to myself, I'm like, wow. But if there's 1,000 milliseconds per second, it goes pretty quick. So you really have to slow it down time and really take your time. And the key word is having a lot of patience.
Hey, rock stars. If you're tuning into the podcast and are feeling overwhelmed by all the maintenance demands at your facility, don't stress. We've got you covered. Our sponsor, Colludus, is your go-to partner to help you tackle all those demands and get them done right, on time, and with top-notch quality. From project planning to execution, Colludus is there to make hard work easy. Visit colludus.com today to get started. That's astounding that when you're breaking it down like that. Say I'm running a facility, right? And I'm having an issue with a boiler or whatever the case may be. How would you explained how you get ahead of it. How do you take action?
Sure. So I like using a pump because it's just easier to explain for people. So people know it vibrates, goes back and forth. Well, backed between with ISO standards, there's limits that tell you that, hey, this pump is failing and there's deviations. But what we can do is with all those samples, we can start seeing a pattern specific to a pump to say, hey, this is going in a trend of failure because it's an anomaly. We're looking at this pump individually. We're not looking at all of them. We're looking at this pump individually, and we have a profile specific to it. And we're like, this pump is failing. Why? Well, when you start correlating maybe some other pump information, like how much horsepower is it? How old is it? How much is it being used? Because guess what? If the pump is vibrating back and forth, you can use that as runtime, right? You can get some
Mm-hmm.
deviations off of that. What's the temperature of the pump? The cute little sensor tells me everything. Is the pump twisting? What's the health of the pump? The physical health. You can determine all these things from it that, because everyone's like, well, you're just looking at vibration. I was like, yeah, I guess, but I can tell you if a pump is twisting and if it's jumping straight up, because those are all things that are really bad for pumps. If it's cavitating, how long is it cavitating? And by the way, where BMS systems play a really cool role with this one, and this is like what I would, if I can grab the VFD speed of that pump, so how fast is it, turning and spinning, whatever it's doing, you now have what I like to call crosshairs on that pump because you know how fast it's supposed to be operating at what RPM and the vibration level. So you can do correlation at 10%, 30%, 80% because it's not going to be this linear thing. It's very polynomial, but now you can predict it. So if you start seeing these polynomial values at a lower VFD speed, you could tell months ahead of time. They'd be like, this pump at this VFD speed is really bad. And what we've done is send out notifications, either email, phone call, automated, SMS. But if you really want to get clever, we'll also do scheduled maintenance for a work
And
generated.
I love it. So it would be a report. Would there be a report that I would receive or the FM would receive, and then you build from there?
Yeah, you would get a narrative because we want to tell you what happened. Because like I said, it goes back to looking at data. If I show you a graph,
Mm-hmm.
do you have the time to really do it? I mean, most FMs have 1,000,001 fires in a day, right? You know better than
Mm-hmm.
anyone, Jay. You interview
Mm-hmm.
them all the
Mm-hmm.
time. So
Absolutely.
how do you kind of get them ahead of it? And part of that is with the pulling all this data to give a narrative, we actually like to push a weekly email out to kind of tell you, how is your building operating at a high level? What are we seeing, right? It's not because I still feel like the level of just looking at data gets really cumbersome. It's really tough. So why can't I just give you at a high level what we're seeing?
Mm-hmm.
And we found that to work out because even though you have abilities to, ask questions about your data sets and stuff like that, it still takes time out of your day to go to the website or whatever you're using for a large language model. Like, why don't we just push it to you? in a form factor that you're already using today and very comfortable, which is email. So you're trying to take something super complex and then you make it super simple to say, that's it. Here it is. And I will tell you right now, the timing of them are very critical. Doing them very early in the morning, typically there's a high read rate. So if you send it at 5 or 6 in the morning, that's when facility managers are getting in the office or so. Sometimes I say sometimes it's a little bit quiet, right? That's their time
Hmm.
they can enjoy because they're not going to get as many interruptions. And even if it takes them 3 minutes to read it, they understand what could be happening for their day or up to the week.
And the actions they could plan as a result of that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. This is a pretty deep dive. What else should we know about? I'm sure there's a ton we could learn here, but what else would you want to highlight for us today, Alex?
For FMA, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, for FMs.
yeah, I mean, when we look at AI with this stuff, I've been saying, like, if I can tell you a story, eh,
Hmm.
you know, and the big thing is that some of these other modules, like I said, here's like an IoT that speaks, your BMS or IoT. I have some CTs here too. Maybe hard to see with the right there. It's more along the lines of like you got to put all that stuff together and really tie it in with asset management. And if you really can tie it in with work order management, because you're kind of relating now, if I'm looking at a boiler and you can have all the sensors on it and you see it's failing, with a lot of these systems, like, do you know when the last time it was serviced? Do you have a date? Do you know how long it was down for when it was serviced? And then when you do have it serviced, can you timestamp that? Because I always like to look at it just like you're changing out an air filter, we'll say.
Hmm.
If I
Hmm.
change out an air filter, your assumption is that the air is going to be cleaner. Your air quality has now, increased in terms of the quality of the air is higher. Did that really happen or did it not? Right? Because that
And
is
you're reading
something.
that.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because now you're saying, like, I saw someone replace the air filter because we're seeing a change in values, but I also have a physical record in the form of a work order that someone actually did it on this date time approximately. So
Hmm.
we can tie the two together. I'm now telling you a story about it. And then you can go back to look at the asset of the air handler, say, are we replacing it enough? Like, I see we do it quarterly, but is that like okay? Like maybe we're doing it too often, or maybe we're doing it not enough.
Mm. Mm. Great
Because
points.
because if you have, say, 50 different air handlers, they're gonna perform different. They're in different areas. They have different environments. They're not always going to be corporate America. And even with corporate America, you may have some areas, and this is where it gets kind of fun, is that you may have people that are in this office 3 days a week versus some that are in there 5 days a week with different capacities, right? And now you're telling me a little bit more. So to kind of say that it's just one piece of information to make some prediction, that's really tough to do. But when you start able to add these other modules together, you're telling me a story of the area and all the, all the environmental stuff impacts that are occurring with that asset. Just because that boiler is on, that doesn't mean someone didn't have a schedule, say, make this part hotter or cool, right?
I love the storytelling aspect because it's really, for me, it would give context. I think that's what I'm taking away from that, right? What's the
Yeah.
context of the data I'm reading right now? What meaning does it have? And what
Yeah.
actions should I take?
Yeah, and I do feel an underserved kind of area within all of this is actually space management,
Say
right?
more.
Because we have all these sensors everywhere, and that's great. The only reason why boilers and all these equipment exist, it's for us. A building
Mm.
could stand alone, right? Do you have a shed at home?
Yep, we do.
Do you have hot water in there?
No,
Do you have
I
any
do not.
water? Do you have
No water.
do you have any heating or air conditioning in there?
A little wood stove.
Okay. That could run it at negative 50 degrees, right? And it's
Hmm.
fine. The only reason why that wood stove is there is it's not for that structure, it's for you. So you're comfortable.
Well said.
And that's where I think space management of understanding who's in that environment really helps. So if you have an air handler, and I know I keep picking on the same things, but the idea is to really stress it to say this air handler is being overly used because it has so many more people in here. And that's why, right? Compared to other areas. So that's why you should reflect against your changing of your air filters. And how do I know that? Space management, because it's telling me who's sitting there and I can estimate usage.
Alex, you definitely know how to land the plane. That shed example was a very good one. Yeah, you're right. It comes back to us.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you could build a structure,
Hmm.
and do you need heating and air conditioning in it for the building? No.
Mm.
Could you work? Sometimes you have equipment that needs shelter. That's why the building exists. But does that piece of equipment, does it need to have HVAC behind it and all these things? Sometimes the answer is yes, if it's critical equipment, don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
But in general, it's really made for us.
Are there certain spaces based on this thread now that you find where your offering would be more beneficial, or this level of measurement and data reporting would be more meaningful versus another environment?
I mean, it's really for anybody. Like we've done single buildings to, people have like hundreds of buildings, right? And the interesting part is that it scales with you. So if you have one building, it's that one individual. But if you have 50 buildings or 100 buildings, it's a couple of layers because you may have the person that's in charge of the building, and then you may have a regional person that's in charge of more buildings. So it's like this hub and spoke model that hospitals do. And then you may have the grand person that may be in charge of all the buildings. Guess what? Those emails we kind of talked about to give the narrative, they're all going to get different emails because it's based upon what we are seeing at different levels, tuned to their persona, their profile.
Mm.
Because if I was an individual person, like I'm going to tell you that this boiler is failing and it's failing a lot if I own just that one building. But if I'm the regional manager, I'm going to give a synopsis of how many times did a building have an issue and which building's having more issues at what times, and give a little higher level to say, like, I think you may need to walk in there to go pay a visit. And if you're a person at the highest level, it's a little bit of a different tone to kind of say, you know, on average, you're on your week to week average of, of failures. So things are okay because you have to look at it at different perspectives because they have different lenses.
Alex, this is like a fire hose of amazing information and education. Like this has been great. We've learned a ton from you already. Is there anything else you'd want to share? Because I'm going to flip it, man. I'm going to flip it on you
Oh,
now.
I
So,
like this.
but is there any other nuggets, like, because we'll give all your contact information, or you will at the end here, but any other nuggets that we may have missed that you wanted to share today?
Sure. I would say this. If you're interested in really doing any of this type of kind of predictions for anybody, doesn't have to be through us, can be with anybody. My only advice, start really small, right? You got to start small, right? You can't boil an ocean, right? You can eventually, per se, but you really got to start small. Pick a project that you don't have a lot of visibility into, and just say, we want to attack this. And we want to have success criteria, have that organization you're working with, like define it with you to say, this is our definition of success and make
That's
it small.
fantastic.
Yeah. Because if you start big, you're just going to get overwhelmed and it's not going to go good. I promise you. I've seen it, I've seen it hand in hand over all the organizations I worked for and worked with. I'm just like, you're going too large too quick. Like it's not going to go well.
I love that. That's really, that hits me as extremely authentic. Really, really good advice. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, all right, we could learn for days, and we will in the future here with you. But I want to flip it on you. So, when you're not doing all this brilliant work, like, what do you like to do? What's Alex all about?
Um, so I like to always say I work on my own house and I do my own tricks, I tell everybody. So I do like working with my hands. So when I was in the military, I was in really young at 17, right out of college. I mean, right out of high school. Sorry. Yeah, I graduated college at 17. Yeah, let me tell you. No.
Nice overachiever.
Yes, I was in at 17 and kind of like, and I was in, I was doing munitions for it. So I was an ammo troop, stuff like that. So, working with bombs, missiles, chaff flare, you name it. And I worked every day outside. And I said, I like working with my hands. I like being able to see things physically build, but man, is it taking a toll on my body?
Hmm.
Right. So that's when I got out and I got really back introduced to computer science again. I went to a vocational school in high school and I studied computer science. And that was kind of my first foray into this kind of stuff. And I was like, this is cool. But that urge of like working with my hands never ended. And I always built my first house up. On my second house, I help out my friends and family for it. And I try to be everything I could be. I always like say as a a potential joke. Like if I wasn't doing this, I would have been an electrician.
I love it. By the way, thank you for your service.
Oh, no, my pleasure.
All right. So I know one other thing about you. You and I are going to get roast beef sandwiches sometime very soon together, right?
That you better believe it.
And I didn't know. For those who are from the area here in Boston, Mass, the Modern Butcher in Danvers, there is a limited supply on Saturdays. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we have to go very early. I will wait to go with you. I've yet to go because every time my brother-in-law or some friends go, they're like, "Go early." So we're gonna have to go there. We're gonna have to wear like fleece pants, fleece shirt, heated everything, and we'll
That
have to
works.
document everything.
Alex, you are a true pleasure, man. A true pleasure. And I know people are going to want to get in touch with you. Could you share? And for those watching on YouTube, you can see it. You've been able to see it on the screen this whole time. But for those who are listening, how would you want people to get in touch with you?
Sure, there's multiple ways. So my organization is True Data Ops, spells exactly how it sounds, TrueDataOps.com. Go there, you'll see a contact form. Put in your name, and then at the describe message area, just say Facility Rockstars, so I know where you're coming from, and then we'll talk. You could put your phone number if you want. I'll get in touch with you. That's one way. Another way is via LinkedIn. Just search for Alessandro Agnello, which could be a little much of a handful. So that's Alessandro Agnello. You can email me at agnello@truedataops.com. But you could call me 617-936-9800. But my actual favorite way of being contacted is by Raven.
Affix the note to their little leg. Is that the method?
Yeah, that's the preference. And then, you pick one leg, we decide on, then I'll pick on the other leg so we know if it's sending or receiving, right? Of messages.
Priceless. Oh, you're awesome, man. You are awesome. Alex, oh, by the way, and for those who aren't watching, Alex is sitting in probably the coolest conference room I've ever experienced. Like, I need to visit you there.
Yeah, it's
It's
very
awesome.
digital.
It's very cool. Alex, thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and everything with us today and for spending your time with us here on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. I had a great time with you, Jay. Thank you for
Me
reaching
too.
out.
Absolutely. And I'm going to give a little teaser here, and I hope Alex doesn't mind, but we may be fortunate enough to have him as a guest speaker at a future Facility Rockstars event. So we'll give you plenty of advance notice, but if you're interested, I wouldn't miss him.
Oh, it's my
So
pleasure. I love the education field of it.
awesome. Thanks, Alex. And for everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in again to Facility Rockstars. Had another great episode. We'll see you next time. It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Colludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.